everybody. My name is Ralf Müller. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to open today's the Oracle Apex office hours. Welcome to another great session we are having today, and this is actually the last Oracle Apex office hours for this year. So before we start, allow me to introduce myself a little bit. I work out of a small city close to Heidelberg in Germany. I work for Oracle for more than 25 years and only recently joined the Apex development team. My background is in workflow systems and intelligent automation. I represented Oracle in the standardization of BPMN 2.0 and case management. My work in the Apex dev team will be to move forward Apex in that direction regarding workflows and automations. A little bit of housekeeping. We have only a few announcements and updates. There is the replay available from the last Oracle Apex office hours on Vanity URLs. So you might want to watch that session. Very interesting new capability of Oracle Apex on the autonomous database. One more is the Ideas app, which we have where people can go to raise ideas, functionality they want to see in future Oracle Apex implementations. Quite interesting, so people might want to go there. And with that, it's a pleasure for me to hand over to Niels de Bruijn, who today will talk and demo about Flows for Apex 21.1, which is a cost-free extension for process-driven applications in Oracle Apex. Niels, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Ralf, for the short introduction and for having me on Apex office hours. Let me first share the screen. So this should be visible right now. And yeah, welcome everybody for this opportunity to talk about Flows for Apex 21.1. My name is Niels de Bruijn, and I'm the founder of Flows for Apex. And what is Flows for Apex? It's an Oracle Apex extension to model and run your business processes. So if you're an Apex developer and looking into process-oriented apps, building those, Flows for Apex is the way to go. And we've done major things in this calendar year for 21.1. So it might be good to have a good introduction into that and to see if you like it. So what is Flows for Apex from a technical perspective? First, we have our workflow engine based on PL/SQL that runs completely in the Oracle database. And for that to run, you need database 12.2 or higher. And on the front-end side, we provide you an Apex application with which you can model your processes with, and you can run those processes, and you can monitor those processes. And for that, you need Apex 20.1 or higher. And of course, you have your own Apex applications built, and you would like to integrate those with Flows for Apex. So the whole communication back and forth is realized by plugins or by using our PL/SQL API. And we provide you with 4 plugins. So without any coding, you're able to integrate your existing app or new app with Flows for Apex. So why use Flows for Apex? First of all, when you start a new Apex project, you would like to see how it all works, how the process works. So you ask your customer, draw me a process model of what we're going to do here. And before he goes to his flip chart or his board, his drawing board, you can actually use Flows for Apex to document these processes. When you bring them also to life, so instantiate processes, you can also monitor those instances. And that can be very helpful. If you have like millions of process instances running, you would like to know where are the pain points in my process. So if there's a special request lying on somebody's desk and it's not been worked on for days, you would easily notify, you could easily see that by monitoring those process instances, and you can take action upon that. What's also an advantage of flows for Apex is that you have a separate process logic from your own app logic. So with that, you don't have to do any other thing than model your process and integrate it with your own app. And you have a clean separation in there, even though it's all running in the single workspace. Regarding the money, it doesn't cost you anything. It's completely open source. It's MIT license. Basically, that means you can do whatever you want with it, what you like. You can resell it. You can modify the code if you like. But also, if you like, you can contribute to the code. So no extra cost involved. It's completely open source. And it runs in your existing Apex environment, also on apex.oracle.com. So create your workspace over there, and you're good to go within a few minutes by just importing the package app we supply you. What it also supports is allowing modification to, of course, to a certain extent of the process model. And it also then allows you to stage those changes from dev to test to production. So we have a great lifecycle coverage in there. And also, if you're looking for professional support, reach out to the partners out there that can help you with building and integration, but also to extend the product with extra features if you like. So with that, I would like to start off a live demo. And for that, I'm going to switch to my browser here, where I've already installed Flows for Apex. As said before, it comes as a package app. So if you download the zip file, just unzip it. There are 2 package apps in there. Just import those. And one of them is Flows for Apex itself, and the other one is the sample app. And I will take you through both of them. So let's first have a look at the Flows for Apex app itself. If you open it up, it's giving you a dashboard where you can get an overview of where you're standing with your process instances, which kind of state they're in. But more importantly, you have 2 main areas here. So first of all, you have flow management, where you can actually manage and model your flows. And second, you have flow monitor, is where you can, as a process administrator, you can see what's happening with all your instances and take action upon that if necessary. So let's first have a look at the flow management. So there are already pre-installed various kinds of tutorials here. So I encourage everybody to take a look in those tutorials. They will give you a great explanation about BPMN and what kind of symbols you can use there. And they are also runnable, so you can create instances of them. So, but we're going to start with a new process model. So let's click on Create Model and give it a category and a name. And then we click on Create. So as of now, we don't have any model specified as such. So I will click on Modify Diagram here. And now I'm actually using the BPMN JS, which is the JavaScript framework. It comes also as open source, which we have integrated here in this Apex environment, with which you can model your workflow or any kind of process. So let's give me a few simple examples here of what you can do with that. So let's start off with starting process saying I am hungry. And then we have a parallel gateway that goes into 2 actions. So this one, and we'll close off with a parallel gateway again before reaching the end. So in this first task, I'm saying, okay, when I'm hungry, I need something to eat. Yeah? So eat some food. And of course, that's a manual task. We cannot automate this. So let's make that a manual task. And the other action would be to drink some water. And of course, that's also a manual task. So let's create that as a manual task. And we even supply you with certain validations during modeling. So by clicking on this, I can now see there's one warning. So let's have a look at this one. It says element is missing label name. So we have various kinds of checks that take place. Once you click here on the button, those will be active, and then you can take a look on that. So in this case, I'm missing a label. So in this case, I will say, I'm now satisfied, and it will automatically go away, the warning, and I got now a valid model. So let's save that. And upon saving, the whole XML definition is now uploaded to the database and parsed. So it's now available in relational tables. So let's create an instance for this. And for that, we change to the flow monitor on the left-hand side. And we're going to create an instance. So I have to pick the model, which is my demo model, and give it a name. Let's say demo 1. I'm going to create it. And I can already see it's already selected here, and I can see the definition here, but it's not started yet. It's only created. So by clicking here on this symbol, I can actually start the instance. And upon starting, it already goes here into the parallel gateway. So it goes in both directions. And now it's waiting for a manual task to have done, eating food and drink some water. I can do this also by clicking on details and then clicking here on complete. So normally your own application would actually do this, yeah. But as a process administrator, I can take corrective actions here for a process instance. So I do this now as a process administrator. And therefore I click on complete, and I can see that this action is now completed. So it will wait here at the parallel gateway for this activity to finish as well. So once done by eating food, I click on that, and I'm now finished with the whole process. As you can see by the colors, I can see which path was taken through the process. So that will give you a great overview. But with 21.1, we also give you a detailed explanation of the whole history. So you can click on show history here, and you can see that when was the process created, when was it started, and when was it completed. But you can also view all the steps that were undertaken. So this is pretty powerful for auditing purposes. What you can also do is download the whole instance as SVG, meaning that if somebody wants to have a closer look at its current state, you can download it as SVG, and you can send that to by mail to him. So that gives you an opportunity to inform people that don't have access to this app. Okay, so those are some of features. What features we have next to that is on the right-hand side. You can also choose the display setting, and this is also new for 21.1. So I can display the model below the report, or I can display it besides the report. So for those of you that have smaller screens, you might want to use the selection either below report or open it up in a new window. Well, when it comes to modeling your processes, let's take me back here to the modified diagram. We have several kinds of enhancements being done with 21.1. So right now you can use something like undo, redo during modeling. You can zoom out, zoom in. You can also select certain objects and then use copy paste to work with that. So it's becoming quite productive with 21.1 modeling those flows. So this is only, of course, one part of the story. Modeling your flows, but how does it look at the other end? Yeah, in your own Apex applications you've built that are process driven, how can I interact with flows for Apex? And for that, I'm going to open up my demo app here. Sample process flow application. And as said before, this is also part of the software distribution, so you can install it also with a few clicks after installing flows for Apex, and then you're good to go. So in this case, I have my sample app open, and we are doing something like expense claims here from a business perspective. Everybody knows this, that works at a company. You have a certain expenses and you have to claim them back to your employee. And for that, we're going to simulate that here by submitting some expenses. So I'm going to create a new expense claim here. I'll say, okay, I had a parking ticket paid for $20. and it was for my customer ABC. So let's submit that one. And right now I can see that it is submitted. By clicking on its status, I can get an overview of the whole process instance. So in this case, it's waiting for an approval of the manager to go forward. So by changing the roles from employee to a manager, I can do this just by clicking on it. Normally you would log out and log in again as a manager, and then you would see that. You can also simulate that in the sample app by just switching the current role. Yeah, so right now I'm an admin, so I have all the accessibility. There's no restrictions, but I could also choose employee, and then I have only access to my expense claims. So let's switch back to admin, and I'm going to switch my role now as a manager, and I'm going to have to take a look at the parking ticket. So $20 for that customer looks good. And let's approve this one. So let's take one step back and let's have a look at the current status. So in this case, it went through. So the status was approved. And here's another gateway that has also a calculation in there. So the expense exceeds $50 or not. In this case, it is below $50. So that would mean it will travel over here. And now the accountant has to prepare the payment. And after the preparement of the payment, we have the execution of the transaction taking place automatically. So let's switch to the accountant here. And what the accountant needs is my bank account number. So let's enter that number. Let's click on save. And now we're actually done. So it's already archived here. And it's out of my list right now. So I can now submit a new expense claim if needed. So this is how the overall process looks like in this example app, but how does it look like under the covers? So first of all, if you click on status, you can see that we have here the process instance on the screen right now. So how was this implemented? Let's first go to the page designer. And as you can see here on this page, there is only one plugin there. Yeah? So by clicking on that plugin, I can actually see that the viewer plugin is active here. And we deliver you 4 plugins. One of them is a viewer plugin, and the other 3 are plugins with which you can take actions on. So those are process plugins. And this region plugin, viewer plugin, will actually show you in which stage you're in. So it's based on this view, and this is like a common good practice. Not directly work with the views we supply you with or with tables, but also to use a page-specific view. And we did that here as well as a common good practice. But if you look in SQL Developer, what's below it, then you can see that this statement is below it. So we actually deliver you with this view all the details you need to get that in place. Yeah, so basically, by selecting that view, we're actually basically selecting that view that I've shown you yet. So to prevent a situation where I get multiple rows back, I have to provide a where clause here, and that's what I'm doing here. So the process ID equals a process ID. In this case, it's an application item we set, and then automatically you get one row back, and that row then automatically also contains the whole XML definition based on this column here. And we already deliver you with those columns. So you just have to select those here, and then you're good to go. So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story would be, how do we actually interact with flows for Apex? Yeah. So let's get back to this page and create a new expense claim and have a look at how this page looks like. So this is a normal Apex page. Yeah, we just used assistance for this, nothing special about it. The only thing we've added here is a new plugin from ours, which is create start flow instance, for instance, which is of type manage flow instance. So in here you have various kinds of actions you can undertake. So one of them is create and start, which will create and start a flow instance. So you can specify some additional information here. I won't go into each of the attributes here, but they are very self-explaining, and you can even set additional parameters if you want. So in this case, process variables. Once you have set that up, then automatically, without any additional coding, you get your flow instance up and running. There are even other ones. So in this case, also we do a complete step of the flow instance, because we're not only, let me take you back to that diagram here. Once submitting the form, we're not only starting and creating, but we also need to move one step forward here. So to make that happen one step forward here, because we already submitted the expense claim, that's why we use another plugin here, complete step of the flow instance. So by doing so, you can take an action here. There are multiple actions you can undertake. One of them is complete step. The other one would be reserve a step or release a step. So reserve a step or release a step could be quite helpful if you have a group of people working on a specific task, and you would like to prevent a situation where multiple people are working on the same task at the same time. So somebody can claim a certain task to do before, after doing it, then to release it again. And of course, to push it one step forward, it needs its context. And you supply the context by using a process ID and the subflow ID. So as you have, like in our previous example, you have like a parallel gateway. So you have both active. So you have to drink food and you have to eat food and you have to drink water. So it needs to know not only the process ID I'm in, it also needs to know which lane do I actually have to move one step forward. And we do this by supplying a subflow ID. And by doing so, you have actually then plugins you can work with and make that integration possible. So I suggest everybody to have a closer look at this demo app. It's quite self-explaining, and then you can use that as a blueprint for your own applications. We also supply you on our website, flowsforapex.org, with a tutorial, complete step-by-step tutorial, where you can learn exactly these steps, how to model your first flow, and how you can integrate that flow with your own app. So take a look at those tutorials. Also within Flows for Apex, I mentioned before. And let me get back here. So that's give you a rough overview of what Flows for Apex 21.1 can do. So how does that work under the covers? Once you have modeled your workflow or process flow, and you click on Save, that would mean that the whole XML definitions, which is the BPMN standard, will then automatically be uploaded to your database, and that gets parsed by using PL/SQL. And the whole definition is then stored in several tables within your workspace schema. And of course, you can then use specific views we supply you to read out that information. For the interaction to take place, and I've shown you this before, we have the custom Apex app where you can use our plugins to interact with Flows for Apex, or you can use the PL/SQL API to programmatically do something more that the plugin maybe doesn't deliver, or you like to do something extra like calling a web service or whatever. So you have full flexibility on that side. So about BPMN 2.0, the best way to do is, let me get back to the demo again of the Flows for Apex app. Flow management. Let's take a closer look at this expense claims model and modify its diagram. So now here you can see different kinds of tasks. In this case, we have a user task, in this case as well. But if you click on the wrench, you can actually specify different types of tasks. So in this case, we have a user task. And if we look at the properties panel, we have an Apex tab over there. And this Apex tab allows you to specify the page that Apex should actually call, normally a form with which you can specify the necessary information this process needs. So in this case, page 5 is being called of the application. And to set the correct context, we also supply here the page items that should be set by using process variables. So I'm using built-in process variables here, the business ref, the process ID, and the subflow ID. But you can also create your own process variables. So process variables is a very important concept of flows for Apex, because we're talking about long-running processes. Your Apex items are not long-running, so they might be terminated at a certain point of time. So you cannot access the values anymore. And with process variables, we introduce the concept to have them persistent along the whole process. So upon working with a process, I would recommend creating those process variables and then call upon the values of those process variables and do something with them in your Apex app. And that's a really great concept that's very flexible and extendable. So when talking about process variables, if you click on this gateway, here you can see that there's a check being done. Does the expense exceed $50 or not? And if we click on the variables tab, which is possible for each of the objects here in this flow, you can actually click here on one of those. You can even define multiple if you want. And in this case, we are setting a process variable that's called check amount under root. And it's of type varchar2, and its value is determined by function body. So by going in the database, we're going to check the amount and set a process variable called check amount route. Yeah? And by doing so, before the gateway, and after that, the gateway gets active. So our engine will then automatically, because this is like a convention with route, will automatically look up the value for that process variable, and based on its value, will decide in which direction it needs to go. So that function body I supplied here will actually return no_VP, or it will return yes_VP. Yeah. So basically that's it. And the value for check_amount is coming from general here because I've named it as such, this ID. So this is very powerful. We have also other task types we support. For instance, we have a service task type here where you can send out an email to notify somebody, which is happening in the demo app. And in this case, we do it by using PL/SQL. So we call a PL/SQL procedure, and that uses Apex_mail to send out a mail to somebody. But we also have like a script task here where you can call a PL/SQL code to do automated stuff. Yeah. So in this case, it will do the automated transaction of the amount and transfer that to another bank account. So BPMN itself is pretty powerful. You can do a lot with it. Let me get back to that. But as it comes to the modeler itself, we fully support BPMN 2.0. But the engine itself doesn't support every symbol that is there in BPMN 2.0 yet. Meaning if you have an existing BPMN process, maybe from another vendor, and you would like to import that in Flows for Apex, make sure you check this slide, because if you have certain symbols on them that are not on this slide, chances are that we don't support it yet. So please contact us if you have such an occasion, then we can have a look over it and see if we can extend the engine to suit your needs. But as you can see, it's pretty powerful already. So the things you can do with it today are covering most situations already. So we use Flows for Apex ourselves at GAG. We also have various other customers that are already using it in production. And one of them is Universal Investment. And they've built a client request app and integrated flows for Apex in their app. So if a customer has a certain request, it goes through a certain process here to make that request possible. And yeah, it's just one use case of flows for Apex. There are many use cases, of course, thinkable what you can do with it. But it's really used in yeah, real life situations at customers. So let's talk a little bit about what's upcoming in the next release. And of course, this is safe harbor, meaning that we are planning to deliver this, but don't take any actions, buying actions or whatever based on that. We know that story already from Oracle itself. So what are we planning to do? Modeler, we're going to extend the modeler in certain ways. So we're going to integrate the already known Monaco editor here in the properties panel. So this editor is already in Apex itself used there, but we're also going to use it for our properties panel during modeling. We also like to integrate and leverage the Apex metadata. So if you have a user task type, you would like to specify page. So why enter a number in that field if we can also provide you with a select list of all the pages that are available. So we like to leverage that. The third point would be a service task to extend that. Right now, you can call an Apex mail procedure if you like, but you have to do it yourself programmatically. And we really would like to deliver you in a way that is fully declarative. So meaning that you can actually then leverage also the Apex mail templates if you like, and you don't need to code anything anymore. The business rule task is something that we didn't support before. It didn't do anything. You could model it, but we didn't do anything, any action on it. With the next version, you can actually specify a PLC code procedure, so you could actually do something with it. So that depends on what you like. Normally in the BPMN world, you could specify a business rule set here. So you can think of it like an if then else construct you have like multiple times, and you would call a procedure that goes through that. The timer event will support the Oracle date format. Right now we support a standard ISO format for that, which is a little bit cumbersome to work with if you're, especially when you're from Oracle and working with the Oracle database. So it was pretty important to us to actually get support in there for the Oracle date format, and also to support cycle timers in case of non-interrupting timer events. What's going to be deprecated, and I would like to say this already now, so you don't start to use that, is using bind variables with the Apex exec. So if you have a script task or a service task, you could actually do two things. You can execute immediate that PLC code, or you could actually use the Apex exec with a bind variable. But we certainly suggest not to use that, because an Apex item you could bind with that may not be valid anymore. Yeah, so think again about the process. It's going to be long running, as opposed to an Apex sessions, which is only valid for a certain amount of time, a few hours maybe. So by binding Apex items to that is not beneficial, because the value might not be there anymore. So the correct way to do this is to actually use process variables in your process model, and then go into PL/SQL and use the package flow process vars to get the actual value of that process variable and work with that. So it's more like a back and forth between your process flow and your Apex app, where your process variables are used quite heavily to make a persistence for all the variables possible over the whole lifespan of the process instance. So we're also going to do a quick update on the demo app for the next release, because one of the features we have is the service task that has a possibility to declaratively call or send out a mail. So we would like to reflect that in the demo app as well. And we have also several minor bug fixes, I would say, already available through our website, flowsforapex.org. So you can download them as a hotfix and apply that to your current version. But it's also possible, to then install the next release, and then you get those bug fixes already incorporated in there. Everybody that's already on an existing version of Flows for Apex, we also provide you with a migration script. So for those of you that are new to Flows for Apex, we have the package app available, which you can install within a few minutes. And for those of you that have already running existing environment, maybe in a production, we have ready to go migration scripts available on flowsforapex.org, which you can download, and then you can upgrade your existing environment. All right, let's talk a little bit about the long-term perspective, what could be on a roadmap. So there are several points here. So when talking about BPMN, we would like to enhance the support for BPMN and make something that's called global sub-processes possible. Right now, you have to model it all in one model, but maybe you would like to reuse a certain model as part of a bigger overall process. Yeah, so that tiny part of your model gets called by several other models. And to tie things up and make that possible, we need support for this, global sub-processes, and that's something that we have on our roadmap. The second point would be messaging, and this is also pretty important, especially when it comes to interacting with third-party people. Yeah. So let's give a small example. I'm ordering a pizza. I can model exactly that, but what happens at the pizza supplier is not known to me. So what I can do is I can put a message saying I've got a pizza ordered here, that the supplier should actually pick up that message at some point of time and should start work on it. What he does there is for me black box. I don't know it, but at some certain time, he will notify me that my pizza is ready for a pickup. So actually, he puts then a message on a message tag, and I could then pull for that message tag and saying, okay, my pizza is ready right now, so my process now can continue, and I can eat that pizza if I like before the process gets stopped. So for that, we need messaging in place, and I believe that's also an important point. In regarding BPMN, that would then give you support for so-called message events. The third point would be pre-built connectors. So imagine a case where you would draw a model and business process, and then you would send a message over to Slack, maybe, or to Twitter or whatever. Could be anything. So you can do that right now by implementing it yourself, writing PL/SQL, or by creating a RESTful interface, or by using what's there already in Apex. But we want to actually leverage that. So by modeling, you can actually give the necessary information, and then automatically would send, for instance, a message to Slack or whatever you would like to be. So we can work on those pre-built connectors. And the fourth point would be the process performance management. So do some more reporting based on your process instances. Let's give you an example, a heat map, for instance. If you have like millions of process instances and a lot of them are hanging due whatever reason, you would like to mark that spot red, because then you can take decisive action on that. So that's one area that we can look in. The other area would be machine learning, where you can do like predictive analysis of data. So in this case, you could also predict the finishing times of a process step based on historical data. So we already provide you with audit logs. So we have already the data in place, but we need to train a model for that and then do some analysis on that to make that happen. The last point would be the support for additional languages. We already support the French language with 21.1, but we also like to introduce other languages for the app. And of course, this also includes Asian languages. And to make that possible, we would like to get support from the community. So if you're interested in helping us out with that, just give us a short shout out, and then we can see what we can do there. The last thing would be the integration of the planned Apex feature, unified task list. And I would like to give the word to Ralph that will talk a little bit about that because he's currently working on it.
Yes, thanks, Niels. So I mentioned in the intro that the Apex team itself is moving a little bit more into the territory of workflow. And one of the things we planned for Oracle Apex 22.1 next year is what we call an approvals component. So the approvals component is pretty much two parts. It's like on the lower end, it's about task management so that people can create tasks for users to act on, and the task actually comprises of certain task properties like a priority, due date, those kind of things. Then certainly what we call the task payload, so the details that might be your travel request or your purchase request. And then people might want to add comments and associate attachments with the tasks. So that is what the task management is about. It manages the life cycle of a task from when it is created all the way through, when a user picks it up and operates on the task, and he might, choose to approve or reject the task. So with that comes an entire infrastructure where we, have like a full history of the task and audit. We will, support certain approval patterns that we think of. The other aspect is the what we call the unified task list. So that will be actually a feature page in your Apex environment that allows you to quickly, bring up a task list for a user, so that users, can see what tasks are assigned to them, then pick those tasks and operate on the tasks. When it comes to integration with flows for Apex. So that approvals component can be either used by an Apex application where tasks are created, from an Apex application, or we are envisioning even an integration with flows for Apex where, the BPMN 2.0 user task will be enhanced to offer an option to use the approval component. You saw the user task live in Niels' demo. The user task in BPMN 2.0 is pretty much about, bringing a user into the picture of a business process. So that's a perfect fit for the approvals component. And certainly there will be a coordination protocol between, what is happening on the task side and what is happening on the process side. And when it comes to the flows for Apex, and also you might want to see the task history as part of your user task in the BPMN flow monitor. So those things are planned for 22.1, and I'll give it back to Niels.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Ralph. As you can see, we're pretty good aligned with the Oracle team itself. And one nice side effect, by the way, if you can look at the screen, you see dark mode. Yes, we support also dark mode for flows for Apex. So how do I get started with flows for Apex? So we have a brand new website in place, and it's called flowsforapex.org. So that will be your first place to go to. And there you can subscribe for a newsletter, so to keep you informed by mail. There you can download our software distribution. You can have a lot of documentation on there, generic concepts, but also installation instructions over there. You have the step-by-step tutorial over there. So there's a lot of things you can look at to get you started with Flows for Apex. Of course, if you have problems with realizing something, if you need an extra feature, if you need like training for Flows for Apex or the integration aspect of it, please let us know. There are partners around there like MTAG and Insum that are happy to help you. So please get in contact with us. I think that's the most important thing. And for that, we also come to our last slide, where I would like to quickly introduce you the rest of the team. So people, Richard, Louis, Moritz, Dennis, switch on your webcams and mic, and let's have a quick introduction. So please tell us your name and what part you took in the project by delivering this great piece of software. So Richard, would you like to start off first?
Yeah, hi, I'm Richard Allen. I've been working on the Flows for Apex project probably for most of the last 18 months and have written most of the BPMN engine that processes your models.
Thanks. All right. So Louis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Louis Moreau. I work for this project for about 1 year, I guess. And I'm mainly focused on the engine app and also on the process plugins.
All right, thanks. Then we have Moritz.
Hello, I'm Moritz. I work with Niels. I'm an Apex architect working for MTAG. Yeah, I did architectural work for Flows for Apex. I'd say I'm the guy pointing out this is a bad idea. And then working on this is a good idea.
He's doing all the code review and he handles the whole GitHub project. So thanks for that. Also data modeling. And then we have Dennis.
Yeah, I'm Dennis Amthor. I also work at MTAG and I work mainly on the JavaScript parts. So everything that has to do with the modeling and viewing part of the BPMN models.
Yeah. So without you guys, we didn't have any chance to pull this off. So thank you very much. We have a great team in place and we're moving forward quite well. Also with Apex, the team itself. So great work there. And with that, we can take any questions. Before we do, I would like to also mention that we are also looking for other partners out there and that who are willing to deliver Flows for Apex to their customers. So if you're interested, just give me a note. And for those of you that are mainly interested in working with Flows for Apex, if you have any feature requests, let us know. We're an open source project, so we do a lot of things in our spare time here. Yeah, better than mine. So with that, we can go into questions. And I believe there are some. So who likes to go over them?
So the one question there at the moment, did we create any live labs? No, but if you go to the flowsforapex.org website, you'll find the tutorial there, which will take you through creating an application and integrating Flows for Apex into your application. There is a series of tutorials that ships as part of the distribution that in about 12 BPMN models takes you through sort of creating a first basic model into more and more sophisticated models and sort of walks you through the BPMN modeling side of this.
Yep. Yeah, take a close look at the step-by-step tutorial. I believe that's quite important to help you get started with Flows for Apex. And regarding BPMN, as Richard already mentioned, those pre-installed tutorials are there. So take a look into them. And if you have any questions left, feel free to contact us.
There are two more questions, Niels, so let me read them. Regarding attachments, where are the files saved? Blobs in DB or in file system?
Okay.
Those attachments refer to email?
The question came when Ralph told us about the task inbox. So I guess it's a question.
Maybe it's for that.
That's a question for me. Okay, so yeah.
Should I repeat the question, Ralph?
No, that's fine. I wasn't sure when the question came. So for the approvals component, yeah, we will store the attachments in the database for now. We might consider storing the attachments on OCI object storage for the Apex service, but the final design has not been done there. Okay, but there is one more. Is Apex now considered a model-based systems engineering tool? Is it intended to ultimately compete with tools such as Genesis, Vitec, Sparks, Enterprise Architect, InnoSlate, and others?
I think this is also a question for you, Ralph, best to answer, right?
Well, I mean, Apex is moving in, or is a low-code, no-code kind of a platform. So yes, we are moving into this model-based territory, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is if you're into developing a process-oriented application using Apex, consider Flows for Apex for that. That definitely will help. And you can actually import and export all your models, and they're all BPMN compliant. So we already had a few people that are having another tool there, and they are migrating away from that tool to Flows for Apex. Of course, have a close look at your BPMN models, if that's feasible or not, how those models are designed, and if it's if they need re-engineering or not. But basically, we support you completely with importing and exporting models. So just bear in mind, as I said before, that we do cover the modeling fully with BPMN 2.0, but the engine itself doesn't support certain types of events. So make sure that you check that slide here. I can put it up here. To make sure that's all supported, what you have today.
There's another question here. Does the runtime show the process instance image with stepwise status? So I think during Niels' demo, he showed you that in your app, you can build in a link to the process viewer, and that'll show you the current status of your process and which steps are currently live and which ones are being completed.
So that's basically
like that. Yeah.
So if you click on status here, we are utilizing that region plugin to show you in which state a process currently is in.
And to create that and add it into your application is very easy. It just uses one of the plugins. So you just create a modal page from the plugin and then link it onto the object you want to be to call it from, and you can add that to your app in under a minute.
Yeah, we supply you with all the necessary information from the API already. So this is really just a minute work, and you have that up and running. Any other questions?
There is one more, which Moritz is typing in at the moment, but maybe we can take it live because we still have a few minutes left. Is there a tutorial on the lifecycle management and promotion, and how will that work with the coupled standard Apex application?
So I don't think we have a tutorial for that specifically. However, we have model versioning in place, which Niels just pointed on our documentation too. This is how you handle the life cycle of a model. I mean, it depends how tightly your application is coupled to the model. This is something that you need to see. I mean, if you change the model around and it breaks your application because you have like connections in between, you need to make sure that you deliver both. What we support is that you can install on a production release a new model the same way you could install an Apex application. So plain SQL Plus is always possible. So we give you the option to automate that. That was from the start one of our key principles, to make this as easy as possible and being enterprise ready when it comes to that, because never connect directly to a production database.
Okay.
Yep.
There are two more questions. I guess one that I can answer, so maybe I can do that first. What are the difference between the flows and the Oracle process applications? So if you are referring Oracle process application to PCS, a process cloud service, or BPM, the difference is quite simple. Flows for Apex is really running in the Apex environment in the database, and thus is close to the system of record. And inside the Apex ecosystem with page design and everything, whereas Oracle Process Automation is more like a platform service that connects to other systems using REST, and it's mostly used for SaaS extensions and stuff like that. Two more questions. I suppose it will be a challenge to maintain compatibility of the engine and objects between the different versions of flows for Apex. Is that something you guys can?
Yes, it's a challenge we talk pretty much each and every day, which should give you the indication we're aware of that. I mean, if we have changes which affect like our data model, we have to provide migration scripts. I mean, pretty much the same. If you get a new Apex release, you install it on an existing Apex framework version, and you trust those people, they take care of migrating your data. So it's pretty much the same in our case.
And one of the key things here is that we have to allow for the fact that processes may be started before you upgrade and carry on running. If you have business processes that start once a week and each takes 2 or 3 months to finish, then at any point you're going to have live processes that are running, and so that creates the obligation on us to make sure that things will run through an upgrade. Obviously, you're going to shut it down while you're actually doing the upgrade, but you don't want to have to finish all your processes or cancel and recreate your processes, because the workflow management system that does that is not useful. So yeah, we're very much aware of that. That's one of the reasons why we put versioning into the model into the system in the early part of this year, and I think the tools are there to help you, run long-running processes.
Yeah, I want to point out one other thing that's maybe has something to do with that as well. What we also support with 21.1 is restarting a certain step in the process flow. So if a certain step in your long-running process is hanging due to whatever reason, might be a technical issue, you have also the possibility by using the process administration console to actually restart that process step. I didn't show you this live, but this is also was also introduced with 21.1, which is quite powerful in real life situations where something can go wrong. Might be a web service call that is not able to execute because it's not there, it's not up and running. So it can be whatever. So this is a great feature.
Okay, we have a few more minutes. One question I saw here: have you experienced calling Unix scripts on the operating system the database is running on?
Unix scripts?
I would assume shell scripts or something like that.
Okay. So with Flows for Apex, the model itself, we allow you to run PL SQL. So for a service task or a script task, and you can do whatever you want there. Of course, you have to be cautious about what you're doing on a Unix operating system level, because that might introduce a security risk in there. But in general, you can do whatever you want with PL SQL you can do today. And that also includes going out to the operating system and execute certain scripts there.
One last maybe, will there be a sort of orchestration level where models can be used as building blocks to configure business processes? I'm not sure I understand.
I just outlined that in our roadmap. So basically, that's the feature here on top: global callable subprocesses. So to actually have making a model reusable. That's not something we have today. So right now you're modeling one big model and that's it. Yeah, there is no interaction taking place with other models you might have defined to make them reusable. So that's on a list. That's something that could be done, and it could be worthwhile, because at certain corporations, you would first start off on a high level modeling a process, and that high level process would then execute sub processes. So each sub model will have then known diagrams, so to say, and I can imagine a case like that that could be useful. All right. Any other questions or?
Should I pick up quickly one, because I was starting to type. It's maybe easier just to quickly explain it.
Yeah, please, Moritz.
So that's the integration with user task. So user task, you specify Apex page and all the values that you normally would do if you specify a redirect or a branch in Apex. And you can leverage process variables. So if you want to have a user task based on some information that you have in the model, go to one page or to another, you would use the substitution strings to direct to that specific page. I think maybe when we have the other demo that we saw from Richard a while ago internally available, this shows a bit of that option. You could hand in like an item or a request value, which then helps you to like fit the page to the task at hand while having a single Apex page. So there's a lot of possibilities. It's pretty much we're utilizing exactly what Apex has to offer for you when you're branching from somewhere to another page. I just keep that in mind.
All right, thanks.
Okay. I hope that helps.
All right. I guess we're done.
So we are done. So give me 1 minute to close this session. That was actually an exciting session. Tons of questions. So it seems people are quite interested. So for more information, please go to apex.oracle.com and to flows4apex.org. It's tons of material there. And let me close with, since this is the last Oracle Apex office hours, so on behalf of the entire Apex development team, we wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a healthy and prosperous New Year. Stay safe, guys, and we see you next year.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.